Welcome to today's show. I am your host, Eric Darnley Small. Thank you again for joining me as always. And if you like what I'm talking about on today's video, you can like and subscribe. As always, you can click the bell also to be notified of new content as it becomes available. As you already know, if you've been here before, I am going to read from some articles and and I'm going to give you my opinion and discussion about it. And to see the full articles, which I highly encourage you do, go to our Mastodon at mastodon.vtip.me/@ what you missed so that you can read the full article and you can get your own content, or I should say context, and figure it out for yourself. And if you want to reach out to the show, you can do it at the Mastodon site as well. If you know anything about this channel, one of the things you'll know is I have been following a number of things. I follow closely on this channel politics from a perspective from the left. I talk about exploitation and racism, specifically from the training that my father did, who was a police officer with the New York City Police Department, and he was an expert in this area. And I talk about that. I also talk about economics and business, to some extent, stocks, economy, and that sort of thing. I did that on my last video. But I also talk about international affairs sometimes, particularly as it's relevant to the other issues I just discussed. And one of the things that I find very interesting, and if you've watched this channel before, you know I've talked about this before, and it's Argentina. Why am I interested in Argentina? I'm interested in Argentina because it could possibly be a cautionary tale to Democrats, to progressives, who a part of the ideology is to support socialism, more government, more social programs, more government into the business life and into our lives. And Argentina gives us a very interesting example of what could go wrong with that ideology. And they're dealing with crippling inflation that is so bad that the younger generation en masse supported a man who has been somewhat radical, ran on a very radical platform that is to get rid of the peso, which is their currency, to move towards the dollar, our currency. In addition, to get rid of all the socialism under Perón, which had been around for the last, 40 years or so. Eva Perón was very famous, play called Evita, movies and whatnot. But they were famously socialist, protectionist, price controls, attacked small businesses, in favor of labor, supporting labor, running up a lot of the debt in the country in order to provide programs for the poor, for people in middle class struggling, in addition to creating, basically government controlling all the levers of the economy of business. And Argentina wasn't always like this. Argentina at one time was a very flourishing South American country, but it took a turn, and there will be more time in the future where I'll talk about that once again, bring that up once again. I think I did a whole video on that. There's great videos on YouTube, by the way, with regard to this issue that you can take a look at, about how, Argentina went from a flourishing economy to where it is today, as opposed to other countries that could have taken a different direction and didn't. But anyway, I want to stick with Argentina because of how bad the inflation was. The younger generation chose a man who was very radical. Milei is his last name. I think Xavier Milei. Blanking on the name right now. Anyway, he came in with this very radical approach to sort of tear apart the social structure of the economic structure of Argentina and move away from Peronism that had been the socialist construct for the last 40 years, I think, or so. And what's fascinating to me is this new move away from even the dollar towards a more tech-friendly approach. And the question is, will tech usher in a new era, new economic era for Argentina? And I'm continuing to watch Argentina's economic future unfold because I find it extremely fascinating to see what will happen with this guy, and also very interested to see, even though he's one man, the government is still ostensibly controlled by the socialists, who are to some extent loyal to Peronism. Yet they're not doing what Republicans are doing here. They're not blocking everything. He's getting some stuff through, and it looks like it's making some changes. I think depending on who you're talking to, some people would say good or bad, but it is definitely making a change. But one of the interesting things I want to talk about is this move towards tech, fintech. It's called. Fintech is the merging of finance with technology, and this says, can ingenuity and capitalism save Buenos Aires? This is an article from Fortune. Argentina's economic shock therapy and fintech boom are wiping out peso notes. This is from Patrick Gillespie and Bloomberg. And it goes as follows. One of the most resilient bastions of cash use in Argentina has been gratuities at restaurants and bars. Tipping on the debit card is legal up to 15%. However, in practice, that option is rarely offered. As a result, patrons, especially tourists, carry wads of bills to dinner, making stacks of pesos for the tip alone a common sight given the economy's largest denomination. Banknote was until recently just 2,000 pesos, about $1.50. But tips are going digital in Argentina thanks to both a boom in financial technology and a footnote in President Javier Milei's shock therapy plan to overhaul the economy. E-commerce giant Mercado Libre Inc.'s payment unit, Mercado Pago, has designed a new function in its widely used app specifically for tipping. The change reflects how fintech has been integrated into cash-heavy Argentina, which had 312 firms in the sector last year, up from 72 in 2017, according to an Inter-American Development Bank report. The latest update to the app, which is only available to Argentine residents, builds on a growing, albeit uneven, trend of some wait staff giving customers their personal Mercado Pago alias for tips in the way Americans use Venmo or Zelle. Milei, meanwhile, will propose a law to formalize tipping on credit and debit cards, while his government is paving the way for commuters to pay for public transport with QR codes or a card like in New York and London. Pedro Filippine, a 23-year-old barista in Zucca Cafe in Buenos Aires, lets customers send tips to his Mercado Pago account, even though the coffee shop has a traditional cash tip jar at the register. Filippini says gratuities tend to be more generous on Mercado Pago, around 1,000 pesos, whereas cash tips come down to whatever bills a customer has on them. While Filippini prefers digital payments, he still sees the case for cash in a country where half the population struggles to make ends meet. Lately, as cell service prices have soared, he runs out of data before the end of the month, relying on Wi-Fi when he can get it to access his Mercado Pago account. So this is interesting. This is fascinating. This is the change in the economy that Milei has talked about. This is capitalism. This is what happens when technology is given an opportunity to get into a community and begin to thrive. Obviously, something that hadn't happened before. We know that because, as indicated in the article, fintech, these kind of financial technology companies didn't exist, to a high degree, 72 versus over 300 now. So the opening up of this space for business has been a boon towards the people. Like, why couldn't the government have done that, created this kind of technology? So this has been opportunity created by this new opening things up to business instead of controlling the flow of capital and controlling businesses that do business in Argentina. So my thoughts on this are what? Well, I think that it's both excitement and educational. I think that Argentina, a very risky bet with Milei, attempts to move the country from socialism to capitalism. What can this teach us about the dangers of too much socialism? Price controls, out of control spending, government takeover of private industry helped create uncontrollable inflation and a feckless government. Now things look to be changing. Will it work out for the country? And if it does, and we should be rooting for the government even if we don't agree with it, what could progressives learn from this cautionary tale? I talk about this and I focus on this because I think that this is something that we can learn from as progressives. Because on the progressive left, although we don't believe in socialism, total socialism, we believe in democratic socialism. But what would keep us from tipping over too far and becoming too socialist and not caring enough about things like inflation, things like spending, things like price controls, things like preventing businesses, government coming in and taking over too much business? I was a big fan in the beginning for instance, a government takeover of Medicaid, getting rid of private Medicaid, or getting rid of private industry in the healthcare industry, and supporting government taking over that. Since Donald Trump, I've changed my mind for a number of reasons. One being I wouldn't want Donald Trump's government to have my medical information. And I think if you're a woman, you definitely wouldn't want that, because you wouldn't want to have that information given to organizations that might try and come at you if you're a woman because you've had an abortion or you may be pregnant and some organization decides to start tracking you. And the government could take away your health care if you don't comply the way they want you to. So there are big problems with government having too much influence on people's lives, taking over too much government. But in addition, I am pretty much against the idea of government being too intrusive in everyday life, people becoming too reliant on government programs. I think that's not a good thing. That's a danger to the country. That's a danger to Americans by and large, because you don't want to have the government that involved in your very survival, because the government will fail you. There is no question in my mind, and I think it's been proven over and over again. America is too large, too diverse, too bifurcated, too all over the map to succeed in serving its people all the time. And the ability to sabotage the government is very easy in a democracy. So to have people reliant, totally, I'm talking about totally reliant, food, shelter, healthcare, etc. The government will fail you, and when that happens, people will turn on the government, and that will not be a good thing for Democrats. I think also, as we can see, when you ignore things like spending, you ignore things like price controls, etc., it can become very dangerous. And the people of Argentina who've been under a socialist system their entire lives, the young people specifically, they're sick and tired of it. And they've decided to take a risk with this guy, Milei. And I think if you're a Democrat, I think if you're just a decent human being, you should want this government to succeed. And I think it's definitely something that I would want, and I want to continue following this. Short video on this. Thank you for watching, and you'll see me on the next video. Thank you so much, and have a great day, guys. Hey there, fantastic viewers. Eric Darnley Small here, and I hope you're loving today's episode of What You Missed. You've reached the end of today's show, but don't worry, there's more show coming up. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click the bell so that you'll be notified when more content is available. You can also help the channel by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm find new viewers so that I can keep bringing you all this incredible content you enjoy. But wait, there are more ways to support the show. You can make a contribution through the show's PayPal, which goes a long way in helping produce even better content for you. And consider becoming a part of our growing community by joining our Mastodon site at mastodon.vtip.me/@whatyoumissed for more engaging discussions and exclusive updates. And here's something you won't want to miss. Mark your calendars for our live show streaming on YouTube and stream.vtip.me Monday mornings, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your support means the world to me, and together we're making What You Missed the best it can be. Thanks for being a part of my journey.